What is up, you guys? We are back with another video. So today we're doing something a little new for here today, man. So this is a lot of things people been asking me like for years. If you hear the music, of course it's Final Fantasy music, so it has something to do with Final Fantasies. So people have been asking me like, Chris, what is your favorite Final Fantasy game? And I have never really given anybody like a really good answer. Like, I'll be like, man, I'm biased. I love all the Final Fantasy games. I don't have no favorite. Can't tell me I have a favorite Final Fantasy. But I said, you know what? Instead of let's saying which one is my favorite Final Fantasies, we're gonna rate these Final Fantasies. Put them on a tier list, out from S tier to D tier. And and this is gonna be interesting to see which Final Fantasy is like that. I think this is gonna be interesting conversation because I have never actually sat down and looked at these Final Fantasy games and give them like an actual tier rating. Like, I've never actually they like by choice, they have all been just good to me. Give them all just be good. So this is gonna be fun. So let's get right into it. And alright, if anybody can see it, I hope everybody can see it. I'm gonna zoom in on it. If you can't, zoom in a little bit. There we go. That's better. Okay. So now here we go. Now for Final Fantasy, let me move my so everybody can, everybody can't see that. Let's move it right here. Alright, let's do it in the middle right there. Alright, so now let's go into it and start with, we're gonna do Final Fantasy 1 first. Alright, so Final Fantasy 1, that was the first game. When that game originally first came out, it was good, man. It was good. Didn't really have like original characters or anything like that. And this is gonna be awesome because, you know, y'all guys know my knowledge of Final Fantasy. And some characters, don't judge me if I forget some characters' names, but it's gonna be all good on that. So let's go by Final Fantasy 1. Final Fantasy 1 started off, you got the, what was it, 3 heroes of light or 4? It was 3 heroes. No, it was 4 heroes of light. And which made Final Fantasy 1 so good was the class change system. Now, what pissed me off about the class change system and the battle system was not bad. Final Fantasy 1 was revolutionary. It was the first one, pretty much kind of, you know, started the way. But as a game itself, you don't really get too attached to the characters per se. And you go on to these adventures. You run into Garland when you first start the game. You run into Garland. He's like, and you kill him actually, and you fight him. You don't fight him again until way later. Oh, spoiler alerts! Got to say that, spoiler alerts for anybody who haven't played all the Final Fantasy games. Should have did that in the beginning, but anyway, you run into Garland, and you know you defeat him, and he gets thrown into the Cave of Chaos or whatever in the Chaos Realm, and you don't fight him again until way later in the game. And so the characters go off on this adventure to collect the 4 crystals or whatever. And you fight the guardians of each of the crystals. So the game itself was, the gameplay was good. It was old school. The remake for it on the PSP was actually pretty dope, and I enjoyed it a lot. So, on gameplay, I would probably give that game, the gameplay was fun. The class system was dope. Exploration, not so much. Exploration and dungeon crawling was a pain in the ass. And the reason being is because the random battles were hella annoying in that game. I'm like, ugh, why do I have to run into a fight every damn time? This is highly annoying. Highly annoying, especially when you first playing the game and you don't know that some areas around a treasure chest, the enemies respawn regardless. So you're sitting there like, what the hell? Why am I fighting? Like, no. Why I keep fighting every time I run into this spot, they respawn. So that goes to show that was one of my weak points of that damn game. That shit pissed me off. But so I would give exploration a long rank. And then characters, it was you grow to the characters because you're actually seeing them on this adventure. Even though they didn't really have any like attitudes or personalities during that time, because dang, this is old school. You didn't even have voiceovers and shit for games. So, for Final Fantasy 1, my rating for this, since it was the first one and started it all and pushed it along its new goals and new stuff like that, and opened up a new generation for RPGs. My final tier for this game, I will give A. I will give it an A rating. Final Fantasy 1 started. I ain't gonna give it S because there's some certain games that deserve S, but we'll get to that later. I give it a 1, A, because it did start it off, and it was hella good. And the characters, you go to them and you grow to them doing their character changes and stuff like that. So I give it as A rating. All right. So we got Final Fantasy 1 down. On to the next one, Final Fantasy 2. All right. This one was weird. Now this one actually had characters. They had original characters, Furion, Maria. I forgot the guy's name. I think I forgot his name, but yeah, him. It was only 3 characters though, so you had those 3 characters. And they actually were going up against the Empire. This was one of the first ones that had brought you up against like an Empire type deal, which Final Fantasy, you was pretty much going against like an evil, a certain evil. Where in Final Fantasy 2, you were going up against the Emperor of the Empire and stuff like that, and eventually that character, the Emperor. Oh, we're gonna base this off of villains too, because villains also make the dang on games. And Final Fantasy 1 had a hell of a villain. Garland was a hell of a villain. But back to 2. Now, this Final Fantasy's 2 villain was very, very underrated. The Emperor, he in certain versions of the game, he took over heaven and hell, and you had to fight 2 versions of this asshole. And like he wasn't ashamed of killing people either. So I mean, like, he was a badass. He was definitely a badass. The leveling system in Final Fantasy 2 was garbage to me. I did not like the it was a real easy way to cheat it too. You could cheat that level up system. All you had to do was like get hit a whole bunch of times and your HP goes up, or you attack a whole bunch of times and your attack goes up. Use magic, your magic goes up, and your MP goes up as well. You could actually cheat the system and keep doing those battles and like doing magic and stuff over again, or keep getting knocked the hell out, and you would get a level up on HP. So that's how the level system was. The more your defense will go up and shit like that. The more stuff that you did that relates to what stat that you're trying to get, that's how it will level up. So that was awkward to me. I didn't like that. It was weird. It was bleh. So, but Final Fantasy 2, other than that, the gameplay wasn't too bad. The characters were great. I love Furion, I love Maria, and the other character, even though I barely know it. I remember his name. I had to look that up and see what his name was. What was that other character's name? That's gonna bug me until I figure out what his name was. Final Fantasy 2 characters. I was gonna say Guy too. I was gonna say Guy. I was thinking of Galuf though. I forgot which Final Fantasy he was in. But yeah, I was definitely gonna say Guy. It just didn't cross my mind. Oh, I forgot about Leon. Leon was in that game too. I forgot about him, so it was 4. But yeah, so story of Final Fantasy, I give definitely the story in Final Fantasy 2 is win. I would give that is win. And the villain was dope. But after all that, a lot of the game suffered due to that gameplay for me. I just did not care for the gameplay. The super bosses were like mediocre too, so it didn't really have any. I beat that game fairly fast. Even the second time, I think I 100%ed that game in like 50 hours, I think. And that was that was the one on PSP, I think I played. Yep, 100% of that game pretty fast. So I will give Final Fantasy 2 a B. Give it a B rating. All right, so on to the next one. Final Fantasy 3. Okay, this game was very interesting. Now you had two different versions of this game. The first one never made it to the US. Actually, we never even got a Final Fantasy. The first Final Fantasy we got was 7, I think. Or was it? No, it was 6. 6 was the first one we got, and it was actually called Final Fantasy 2 or some shit like that. Anyway, back to what I was talking to. Final Fantasy 3. The version I played, which was the DS remake. I played the DS remake of the game. That game was like, God, that Final Fantasy was weird, but it was really fun. The class system saved that game for me. The class system was dope as hell. Story, okay. I like the fact that you fought. So to me, the last boss, the final boss in that game was horrible. Cloud of Darkness, like that. She was just an entity. To me, the real like villain of that game was the character you fought before her. I think his name was like Xenos or something like that. Do not quote me. Do not quote me. Let me see if I remember his name. Zant. I thought I said Xenos. Zant. Yeah, and see, like, he was, man, like, he was more of the villain in the game than Cloud of Darkness, but it was retarded because, like, he ended up being controlled. Like, I think she was being controlled by Cloud of Darkness or whatever. And man, it was garbage, man. I just, I hated that. I hated that fight. I really, really hated it. Like, well, I liked his fight, but I hated Cloud of Darkness. That, it was so dumb, man. So that game definitely loses points for the main villain being, like, completely unknown until you actually get to the damn end of the game at the end of the Crystal Tower. Now, I will give this game the best last dungeon, though. Maybe I won't. Let me see. Because Crystal Tower, that song in Crystal Tower, I can play that song 1,000,000 times over. But the class system was definitely good in Final Fantasy 3. The DS version was it was okay. It was like, man, it was fine. It was fine. I don't know how the older ones, because the older version you play with like the Onion Knights, and you had those different classes or whatever. You had the 4 different Onion Knights or 3, whatever it was. But it was okay. It was okay. But still, Final Fantasy 3. Dang, you know what? After actually going back and talking about this, because I think in 2012 I actually played through. I did the Final Fantasy Challenge and played through all of them. But Final Fantasy 3, I definitely give it a B. I give it a B rating. I definitely give it a B rating. It was good, but it wasn't like great. Wasn't great, but it was definitely good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. All right, next one, Final Fantasy 4. So, Final Fantasy 4 is easily one of my favorite Final Fantasies. Easily. This game had good characters, a good villain, besides the last boss, but I definitely love Golbez. Golbez was a good ass villain, even though he ended up turning good at the end. But I give I'm not gonna count after years in this either. But Final Fantasy 4, man, good story, good gameplay. Man, Final Fantasy 4 is definitely one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. To me, Final Fantasy 4 was the first one that brought out the having the original characters. This is the first one to have actually original characters, because 3 didn't have original characters. Oh well, no, 2 did. 2 had their original characters, so I take that back. But 4 was the first one that I actually really felt close to a lot of characters, because you definitely seen the growth in those characters, especially in Cecil, especially in Rydia, because Rydia became like from a kid to a woman with summoning powers. Her powers quadrupled. she got super powerful. You see like the growth of Cain, man. It also introduced like Cain with the Dragoon class, man, which was, man, dude, that's my favorite class. That's my favorite class, dude. Cain became one of my favorite characters. So, for me, Final Fantasy IV was definitely a turnaround, man. So, as far as like RPGs go, I'm putting that one in S tier. Put it in S tier, dude. For me, Final Fantasy IV was definitely an S tier Final Fantasy game. Most definitely. Most definitely. The characters was good, the gameplay was good, the story was good, the villain was dope. The villain was dope. So Golbez was a dope villain to me, man. He was dope. It also had some other good middle boss fights. The last dungeon was okay. The lunar palace or whatever, it was okay. When you fighting on the moon, so that was pretty dope. Getting the moon wheel to go to the moon, the lunar wheel, so that was dope. All right, so man, this is fun, man. We're talking about these Final Fantasies. We still got a lot to go. All right, so next one, Final Fantasy V. This is a so Final Fantasy V. This is a controversial one, because like a lot of people have not played 5. A lot of people, I may surprise people with where I put this game. So 5, I played the I didn't play the one that came out on PC. I heard that port was horrible. I played 5 on, God, where did I play Final Fantasy 5? I know it wasn't PSP. I'm trying to remember where I played that game. Was it it was definitely on emulator, but I can't remember where I played this shit. I cannot remember where I played it. Anyway, cool thing about 5, 5 had dope characters. Krill was dope. Bartz was dope. Krill's granddad, whatever his name was, I forgot it, was dope. Now, I will give Final Fantasy V one of the best villains. I will definitely give them that. Cause damn, what's his name was dope as hell. X-Death was, man, dope ass fight, man. I'm trying to remember who was the other part. So you had Bartz, you had yeah, that was Krill, Galuf. You had Galuf. And you had Ferris. I forgot about Ferris, man. I forgot about Krill. Actually, I think took place of her grandfather, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Galuf? No, because somebody died. Somebody actually died in Final Fantasy V. Galuf was the one that died. Yep, Galuf was the one that died. I couldn't remember which one, but it was, and then Krill ended up taking his spot. And I think the Galuf was Krill's granddad or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. But I think Krill was Galuf's granddaughter, and she ended up taking his spot after he passed away. That's spoiler. So, like, man, Final Fantasy V was so good, man. The music wasn't okay. This Final Fantasy V also introduced one villain that everybody knows, that some people didn't even know which Final Fantasy that motherfucker came from, and he came from 5. It introduced Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was the villain that got introduced into Final Fantasy V. The 5 swordsman or 6 armed swordsman, man. And you fight Gilgamesh. I think you fight Gilgamesh like at least, I think you fight that asshole at least 5 or 6 times. I can't remember how many, but you fight him one last time in the last dungeon before you fight X-Death. I actually have videos of me fighting him in the last. I have a lot of videos of 5 actually. I have a lot of Final Fantasy V videos on my channel if you guys want to watch those. I think I have Galuf's death on there too, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that game, man. The characters were great. Exdeath was an asshole, man. He was definitely up there in villain wise. He was a great villain. Very good villain. Last boss battle was hella annoying. So, man, y'all will be surprised where I put this. God, where am I put 5? I'm gonna put 5 right here. I'm gonna put 5 right there on A. I'm gonna give 5 A. It's not as good as 4 because 4 had more memorable characters. Especially had my babe Rydia and Kane and Cecil were dope. So yeah, I have to still give it below 4. So yeah, 5 is definitely up there. Alright. We going to a big one now. So, next one. Final Fantasy 6. Ow. Final Fantasy 6. So this game actually has the most characters out of any Final Fantasy game that are playable. The most characters. I think this game had around like 13, 14 characters, somewhere around there. So like it wasn't too hard. Like, I mean, you can follow the story. Some of them I think were even missable, but like Shadow, I think Shadow was missable. And I think the little, the blue magic beast was missable, or the blue magic kid was missable, or whatever, the beast or your kid, whatever it was. I think it was a kid that used blue magic. I can't remember. But the main ones you had Edgar, you had Terra, you had Ortina, wherever you want to go for it. You had the boxer, what's his name? Shit, I forgot his name too. Don't quote me on that. You had Setzer, the pirate. You had what's her name? Cecile. You had her as well. So you had a lot of important characters in that game as well, man. I think Edgar was one of my most useful characters because he had them damn tools that hurt like a motherfucker. But so Sabbath or God, it started with an S. That was the one that can body slam Doom Train. So 7. All right, so 7 characters were great. Now people will start trying to hate me for this, but that game was linear too. 6 was linear until you got to the last act in that game where they did a time skip, and it was like the world was all desolate and shit, and Kefka was ruling over shit. That game was dead end linear. It was linear all the way through. Linear. I don't care what nobody say it was, because you was stuck to a way, and the game was done in chapters. So I'm like, I'll be tripping out when people say that Final Fantasy, like, all Final Fantasy's not linear. Man, Final Fantasy 6 was linear as hell. That game went in chapters until the very end, when you get all the characters and you can go roam around the world and do extra side quests and shit like that. And of course you could do side quests in between, because each chapter you play with certain characters. So, and everybody was going through certain things too. So at the end of the day, man, but after all that, the storytelling in Final Fantasy 6 was so damn good, man, that you personally grew attached to all the characters. That story was hella fucking good. The 6 story was great. Main villain, probably one of the best villains in the Final Fantasy genre. 6 had Kefka, man. Kefka was crazy. Now, another thing that Final Fantasy 6 also did was took it away from like it wasn't too medieval. It was like a mixture of medieval and steampunk type style, because it took place in kind of that time where they meshed both of those together, so it was becoming more modern. You could tell Final Fantasy was becoming way more modern. And so it was the first one to take that with Magitech armor and shit like that, man. So Final Fantasy 6, and its gameplay was great too. The gameplay was good. The boss battles were hella dope. Loved all the boss battles. So I give Final Fantasy 6 top tier. That, especially since the Final Fantasy 6 is probably the most highest rated Final Fantasy game. So I give Final Fantasy 6 S tier. Of course, y'all probably expecting that. Y'all probably expecting 6 to be S tier. Looks like we're pretty solid right now. We give that S tier, man. So we good on that, man. Alright, so next one. Next one, it's gonna be a no-brainer. Of course, this is everybody's favorite Final Fantasy, and that is Final Fantasy VII. But y'all actually might be surprised at where I put this damn game, though. I'm trying to think where I might put Final Fantasy VII. We gonna see when I start talking about it. So, Final Fantasy VII was revolutionary. First 3D Final Fantasy game. First one to break off into the 3D realm. It was on PlayStation. A lot of people's first Final Fantasy game, including myself, was the very first Final Fantasy that I played. Cloud. Alright, now this is where Final Fantasy VII kind of lost me at. Cloud was an okay protag. Final Fantasy Remake Cloud is a little bit better. But then again, he has personality now and voice acting. But I still give, don't get me wrong, I still give Cloud his props though. So Cloud in the beginning of Final Fantasy VII, I didn't too much care for. He was just very stoic, didn't really have any personality or anything like that. Which was his character. I mean, I get it, that was his character dynamic. He had a very tortured past. So that was understandable why they did Cloud like that, and I'm glad that Aerith opened his ass up. So, Final Fantasy VII, the things it got, characters. Loved every single fucking character. Loved every one of them. Cloud, Barret, Tifa, Bay, Tifa, Bay, Aerith, Red 13, except K-Sith. I ain't like, well, no, K-Sith I like too. He brought the humor to the game. He was fun. He was a fun character. So K-Sith, Sid, and who else am I saying? And Vincent. The Vincent, one of the coolest motherfuckers in like the game, man. So those characters, dude. Final Fantasy VII definitely had the characters. Story in Final Fantasy VII. Oh, and they did have Zack too. I can't forget about my boy, the real hero of Final Fantasy VII. But also, what Final Fantasy also had though was Final Fantasy VII, I should say, was definitely the new world and story. Final Fantasy VII definitely took a very modern style with 7. It was very modern. You was in a city. You had bars. You had people like walking around the city and experiments and science and technology and the steampunk style, and it was modernized. They modernized Final Fantasy VII. But they also kept that other side too, out of the outside world, where they kill it. That Midgar was killing the planet by stealing life force from the planet and by making this humongous city. And so like it was like, dude, that's dope. They put like it's like this environmentalist thing they got going on and shit like that. And then of course you're going up against this major entity, which is the Calamity, which is Jenova. And then you got Sephiroth going crazy over here talking about the planet need to be punished, being mind washed by Jenova. And so like now villain wise, everybody likes Sephiroth. Yeah, Sephiroth's cool. He's dope. Okay, yeah, he got the long sword, long silver hair. He looks cool. Sephiroth. As a villain, Integrate changes all this shit. Now going back talking about this, like, so well, remake changes all this shit. But Sephiroth and Crisis Core was dope. Sephiroth in 7, I didn't too much care for. Sephiroth was just this guy going around. He was really just in the background most of the time. Only time you really got to see Sephiroth personality-wise, like Sephiroth being himself, because you gotta think about it. Sephiroth went crazy after the events of Crisis Core. So you gotta think about it. Was what we seeing through the Final Fantasy VII game really truly Sephiroth? Like, that was crazy Sephiroth. That wasn't Sephiroth in his right damn mind. That was crazy ass Sephiroth. Like, oh man, oh Jenova, I'm going to help you punish the planet and all this stuff. So yeah, like, I didn't like crazy Sephiroth. Didn't too much care for him. Song was beast mode, and the last boss battle was amazing. But I didn't become a fan of Sephiroth until Crisis Core actually. That's when I became a fan of Sephiroth. I didn't too much care for Sephiroth in the original Final Fantasy VII game. Didn't care for him at all. But when Crisis Core came out, and we saw who Sephiroth really was, and man, dude, Sephiroth was a calm, cool-headed soldier. He wasn't nothing to play around with. Like, he wasn't nothing to play around with in Final Fantasy VII. But man, you actually saw some personality in Sephiroth, and like, wow, like you saw him as a cool-ass dude. He was a cool-ass first soldier class that had some problems. But man, he was fighting them until he actually read them damn library books in Nibelheim. And he went crazy. So man, Final Fantasy VII, I didn't too much care for Sephiroth. The story was great, characters were great, but I would definitely give Final Fantasy, now if I'm gonna say, I would definitely give 7 an A. I give Final Fantasy 7 an A. Now, if you combine 7 with the like the entirety, like with the entire compilation, if you count 7, Dirge Cerberus, and all those put together, oh yeah, 7 will be top tier. Now the remake will be, it's got gameplay wise, story wise, combined with the older compilation, that's a 7. And depending on where they go with it too. Depending on how Tetsuya Nomura and everybody at Square Enix go with Final Fantasy VII Remake and how it combines with the compilation, oh yeah, nah, that might be S rank. That might be above S rank because everybody has a lot of personality. I'm close to every character when playing this damn remake. Everybody has personality and they fun to watch. So yeah, but for the original classic Final Fantasy VII game, I definitely give it an A. Give it an A, man. If I had an A+, I'd give it an A+ to put it right above 5 and 1. But as far as that, I still give it a 7. I mean, I give it an A. Okay, so Final Fantasy VIII. That's the next one. I have a love-hate relationship with this damn game. I got a love-hate relationship with this damn game, man. So, Final Fantasy VIII. Characters are great. Selphie, Squall. Shoot, heck, one of the villains is my name on that I put my name on a lot of my video games. Cypher. Cypher was dope. Dope little side villain. Yeah, but Squall, Selphie. Selphie was dope. Quistis was dope. Who else you had? You had the dude with the gun. And Zell. Who was the dude with the gun's name? What was his name? I forgot the guys of the game. I remember Zell was the boxer. I forgot the dude with the gun's name. I'm gonna have to look it up. That's gonna kill me if I don't look it up. Watch, I'm gonna think of it as soon as I find it. God, what was the guy with the gun's name? Oh, what was your name, character? Irvine. Yeah, Irvine. He was the one with the game. So yeah, you had them. Yeah, that's the only one I missed was Irvine. But yeah, man, that game. The last boss battle. Now, the only thing about Final Fantasy VIII's story mode, Final Fantasy VIII story mode is going fine. Until like, there's been a lot of theories about 8, is that like, wow, did this Squall actually die in like that part where he got shot and he's dreaming the rest of the game? Which it kind of makes sense because in the later half of the game you get like all kinds of crazy shit happening. Like, I don't know how we end up fighting a mage inside her castle. That game confuses me. That game confuses me. But like, it was still good, man. It was still a fun game to play. I didn't like the draw system. A lot of people like it. I just didn't like the draw system. I got tired of just being like, oh, draw, give me this magic skill and all this thing. And this game was different too because the more, I think it was like, the more you level up in game, the harder the game was. If I'm not 100%, I'm thinking that's how that game was, because you can beat this game at like level 12. But the more you leveled up, the stronger the monsters got. It all depended on how you use that junction system. If you didn't use that junction system right, you was gonna get fucked in that game. But Final Fantasy VIII, man, I got a love-hate relationship with that game, man. It was good, but the best thing, one of the best things about Final Fantasy VIII to me was definitely the characters. Story was okay. It definitely had that futuristic feel. It was good. Don't get me wrong, you guys. I love all the Final Fantasy games, so don't be coming at me. But I love all the Final Fantasy VIII games, but 8, man, it's just the weakest game in my opinion, man. It's just really the weakest game. You know, I love the characters. Like, I like the characters, but that junction system was trash to me. That damn, what was it? That, so summons were cool. The card game was fun that you played. What was it called? I forgot the name of the card game you played. Shoot, you can get powerful shit playing that card game. But other than that, man, yeah, I had to give Final Fantasy VIII a C. A C rank. Even though it's still one of my, it's Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VIII was fun. It's just that junction and draw system. Hell, man, I just did not like this shit. I did not like this shit, bro. I ain't like this shit at all, man. I did not like this shit. So yeah, I don't know anybody who fans, because people really like 8. They really do. They really like 8. I got it on the new remake they got on PC right now. It looks amazing. They faces don't look like mush anymore. So I definitely, man, when I do my new challenge, I'm gonna definitely play that game again. Alright, so yeah, we got that down. Next is Final Fantasy IX. Okay, so this is gonna be a weird one. Final Fantasy IX. Like, so the characters were pretty good. Zidane was cool. Freya was dope. I didn't really too much like the knight guy. I think it was Sir something. I can't remember his name. Then you had the princess chick. What was her name? I forgot about Renoa from Final Fantasy VIII. But what was the princess's name in Final Fantasy? We ended up actually calling her another name in Final Fantasy IX. But you had Zidane, you had her, you had Freya, you had the big muscular punching bag guy. I forgot his name too. Hardly remember anybody from 9. I definitely remember Freya though. Freya was that chick. Or was that rat, I should say. Siegfried, wasn't his name Siegfried the Knight? Oh, well, I'm tripping. Oh, I'm thinking of something else. What was that knight's name? Oh, Steiner. So Steiner was his name. Dagger, that's what we call her. Yeah, they did call her Dagger. That's so dumb. They called her Dagger. And then you had Vivi. Oh man, Vivi was such a cool character, man. Vivi was a dope ass character. I actually like Vivi a lot. What was the bit? Amarant. He was weird. I don't even think he really talked that much. But other than that, like the game, man, Final Fantasy IX, man, the story was goat. I hated the villain, Kuja. He was like, he dressed weird, but other than that, he was a solid villain. I take it back. He was a solid villain. Cause he was an asshole through that entire damn game. He was an asshole. Which he wasn't even the last boss. You fought like some kind of entity in the end of that game too. Like, I don't like some of the Final Fantasies where you have to fight like this major entity at the end of the game. I don't really care for those like last boss battles too much. What's his name? Final Fantasy VII did it real good with you fighting Sephiroth. He was the last villain. Final Fantasy V, you fought Exdeath at the last villain. Final Fantasy IV, you fought somebody different, but it was still like you still fought Gobez though. But like Gobez wasn't no pawn. He was actually doing. He had a reason for his shit. And so like, but the person you fought after Golbez was some kind of entity too. But Golbez, he wasn't no pawn. He was doing it for a reason. And the fact that he was Cecil's brother too was also a trip. Final Fantasy 1, you fought Garland. You fought Garland at the end of the game, but he just became Chaos. So yeah, so that was weird. And Final Fantasy 6, you fought Kefka. You fought Kefka at the end of that game. So the Final Fantasies where you actually fight the villain instead of some entity were actually dope too. So Final Fantasy 9, I give Final Fantasy 9 a B. I give it a B. I ain't gonna put it in A, but I give it a B. The gameplay was really good. Now the one thing I didn't like, the Final Fantasy 9 had some pretty cool super bosses. Actually, they had a very cheap. I tell you, they had a cheap super bosses. They had one cheap, and that was Osmond. Osmond was a cheap ass boss. I would never recommend anybody playing that, fighting against that boss. F that boss. But the trance system was okay. It was like random though. Like you had to get lucky to get that shit in the battle. But the graphics in Final Fantasy 9 was really good. I really like Final Fantasy 9's graphics. It was a step up above Final Fantasy 8 and 7. So the summons were nice. That the arc that you get in Final Fantasy 9, doing that summon was dope. It didn't beat 7's what you call, that's another thing that Harley mentioned too in this ranking is how the summons were done. Shoot, 7 had the most, or was it 6? 6 had a lot of summons too, but 7 had a lot of summons. 7 had a lot of damn summons. It had a lot, including like Knights of the Round. I think you had Phoenix. You had a lot of summons in 7. You had a lot of them. I think Knights of the Round was like an extra rare one, and I think Chocobo was a record, another extra one too. So they had a lot of summons in 7. But as far as like the best animations, man, I don't know, man. 7 did have Neo Bahamut. Then you had Bahamut Zero too, and both of them were clean. So I don't know. 7 had some clean. 7 had the cleanest summons. 9 had the cleanest animation for a summon, which was Arc, when he transformed from the boat into the robot and blew shit up. I thought that shit was dope. All right, so I still give 9 a B though. Still give it a B. All right, so next up, one of my favorites, and that is Final Fantasy X, man. Final Fantasy X had great characters. Titus, Yuna, Waka was weird, but a good character nonetheless. He was a racist too. Waka did not like the Albed, man. He had a problem with the Albed. I don't know if that word triggers on YouTube or not, but if it does, my bad. But yeah, Waka did not like the Albed. He did not care for the Albed at all. But and that's crazy because you had an Albed on your team, which he came along. He came along at the end. So yeah, you got Waka. Who else you got? You got Lulu. Lulu was a powerful summon. And then you had Kimari, and I'm trying to see if I can remember everybody, if I didn't forget anybody. Auron. I forget Auron. Yeah, Auron, the badass. And I think that's everybody. And because Kimari was the blue magic one, the big blue magic user. But yeah, I think that's everybody, if I'm not mistaken. And Auron was such a badass, man. Such a badass. So yeah, for Final Fantasy X, story was great. Summons animations were off the damn chain. First Final Fantasy to actually have voiceovers. Yes, Force wanted to have voiceovers. It broke that barrier, man. It broke that damn barrier. So, and the gameplay was outstanding. The fact that you could switch characters out in the middle of our battle was a new tactic. Super bosses were amazing in Final Fantasy X. Characters are good, story was good. Villain, I don't care what anybody say, Seymour was the villain of that game. It was not Jet. It was definitely Seymour. Seymour, they had a badass villain. Yeah, man, yeah. Final Fantasy X, that game was the shit, and it was revolutionary as well. With the voiceovers, man. So, and I actually like Tidus as the main character. Man, dang, why I want to put Final Fantasy X, man? I have to put 10 in S tier. I'm gonna have to do S tier for 10 because 10 was actually the first one I've beaten damn near more than 20 times. I know I played that game definitely 20 times. I've played that game damn near 20 times. Without a doubt. Played that game 20 times. So yeah, 10 definitely going in S tier. Definitely going in S tier. Yeah, great characters, great gameplay, great story, man. Sad, depressing story. But yeah, it's definitely up there, man. It's definitely up there. I know I'm hitting people with that Final Fantasy 7 and 8 rank. I know I'm hitting people with Final Fantasy 7 in that A rank, bro. All right, so next one, man. Final Fantasy X too, actually. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know I put that game in here. So Final Fantasy X 2. Oh my goodness. Story in that game was, it wasn't even a story really, but it's just Yuna just trying to find Tidus. But y'all can talk about Final Fantasy X 2 all y'all want, but that gameplay in that game was the shit. Was the shit. I love the gameplay in that game. That game was dope. But that's the only thing I can really give it. Is like because I mean Yuna, I always Pain was just there. But I liked her character though. I loved Yuna, Pain, and Riku as a team. I did love, they have a very cool team dynamic. I give it a C. Definitely give it a C. The gameplay wise, it was still fun. Damn, I put that shit on the same level as 8. I'm hitting it on homes, but I know I'm gonna get so much flack for this list. I'm gonna get so much flack for this list, man. But don't forget, this is just my personal opinion. Really, I love all these games equally, but this is if I had to put them in a tier list. This list is actually looking pretty even. This list is actually looking how I thought it was gonna turn out. All right, so 10-2's done. Now this next one is a very underrated fucking Final Fantasy game, and that is Final Fantasy 12. Dude, y'all need to stop sleeping on this damn game. 12 was good as hell. I give 12. Alright, so character wise, didn't like Vaughn too much. Vaughn was okay. The real main character of this damn game was definitely Bosch. Penelo was more interesting than Vaughn was. It's like Vaughn, like, oh my god, man, my brother died. I'm going to jump into this adventure to go and be a pirate. Him and Penelo, adventuring time. Whereas Bosch had an actual reason to go up against the Empire. So you had Bosch, you had Balthier. Balthier was a cold character. I loved Balthier. So my favorite characters: Balthier, Fran, Bosch. I hated Ash. I didn't like Ash as a character too much. She was okay, but she was like, she was alright. Didn't too much care for her. But yeah, Balthier and Fran. Penelo was straight. I liked Penelo more than Vaughn. But yeah, and then you had like the little characters that join you, like Redis, the other pirate guy with the little colorful pants, and then you had Vosler. Vosler would join you at some points too. Yeah, I know none of these names. If nobody played Final Fantasy 12, none of these names probably people probably don't remember these characters. But yeah, man, the characters were definitely a mixed bunch, but my favorite three were definitely Fran, Balthier, and Bosch. Those were the stars of their character cast, in my opinion. whereas Vaughn was supposed to be like the main, but he was not the main. Villain wise, I actually like the main villain. People really underestimated Vayne Solidor. Vayne was a hell of a bit, and plus I love the judges too. The judges were solid villains. Judge Gabranth, he was and Judge Zypher and Judge Geese. Dude, them judges were on point, man. Those judges were on point, dude. And there's actually a secret boss in the Zodiac edition that I have never beaten. Anybody say they beaten that boss is either capping or they recorded somebody else's video of them beating it. But it's not impossible, because I have played it and I've gotten halfway through that boss battle. I just haven't beaten it yet. I'm gonna try to beat that this go. Why, if I decide to do a Final Fantasy challenge again, I'm gonna try to beat that boss. But yeah, Final Fantasy 12. Man, dude, story wise, I'll put that in A rank. I wouldn't put it S, but I definitely put it in A as a underrated Final Fantasy. And 12 also had great boss battles, super bosses, great in-game content. I need to also talk about in-game content on a lot of these games. Now, you know what? That may end up making me changing Final Fantasy 7. Final Fantasy 7 has some good in-game content. Damn. That might make me edge 7 up. I don't know. We gonna see later on. But 12's in-game was hella dope. Out of all the Final Fantasy games, 12 had some of the best in-game. Had some of the best ones. So I'm gonna definitely put 12 up here in A. So yeah, in game, Vayne wasn't bad. Didn't like the main characters too much, except Balthier, Bosch, and Fran. Gameplay was amazing. A lot of people didn't like the Gambit system, but the Gambit system was dope, especially when you're doing a long boss battles. And it was like a programming them to do this if something goes down or this or that. And yeah, the Gambit system was dope. So yeah, I give that for that game. Final Fantasy 12A. Now, Final Fantasy, here's a controversial one too, is Final Fantasy 13. Alright, so, I'm gonna be completely honest with this game, because a lot of people shit on this game. Final Fantasy 13 was fun as fuck. That game was fun. Anybody say otherwise is tripping. I love the gameplay in Final Fantasy 13. That shit had you thinking with the paradigm system and changing between paradigm systems. And y'all can't say I'm not, because I explained all these different games in that gameplay. I done played all these damn games. Final Fantasy 13 was fun as hell, y'all. That game was fun, man. The paradigm shift, like, oh shit, my health about to go. Let me go into defense and have y'all two heal. Oh wait, you about to get debuffed. Let me switch to this paradigm shift and start debuffing you and taking your attack down and speeding my people up. Man, you can't. That shit was dope. Final Fantasy 13, man, gameplay was off the chain. And now that 7 though came out, of course 7 gameplay is off the chain now, but still, 13 gameplay, I liked it. It was dope. Character wise, Lightning. I like Lightning. She was a very stoic female character. She was on her shit. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was a leader, definitely a leader. So I definitely give Lightning her props. I liked my favorite character was definitely Fane though. Fane had more personality than anybody. Snow was my second favorite character. Snow was dope. So Snow, Fane, and Lightning were dope. I liked not Snow. Yeah, Snow. Yeah, Snow was dope. And then you had Vanille. Vanille was okay. Size, okay. Size was like, he kind of like Size felt like a little placeholder to put in there. Like, put the token black guy in there. Kind of like, even like Barret is 10 times better than Saz. But yeah, Saz kind of felt like that. And then you had, but at least Saz had a goal though. He had to save his son, so he did have a goal what he was doing, just like Barret did. But so both of them had goals. So Saz was okay. Saz was okay, but he still felt tokenish. And then who else? I'm missing one more. What's the little kid's name? Hope. He also had Hope. Hope got better in the newer games, like in 13.2 and 13.3. Hope was okay in 13. He was a kid though. He was still a kid. So, but I actually liked Hope too. So characters weren't bad in 13. They were not bad, and Snow was a beast. Snow was a beast, man. I liked him. Summons didn't too well. Summons it was cool. The little vehicles and transforming, they were all right. It was cool. Like, I didn't have no problems with it. It looked cool. Like, Bahamut was straight, and Odin was okay. Like, I mean, it was cool. It wasn't no Final Fantasy, like, you know, summoning stuff to come by you, but 12 did summons dope. 12, I like 12 summons where they was fighting alongside of you. Anyone where you there fighting alongside of you was dope. I think in 12 they were called like Aeons too. I don't think they were called like summons or whatever they were called. But they even have like Bahamut or anything. Like, they had all original summons. That was another crazy thing. They had all original summons. They had like Zodiark. You had Ultimos or Ultima, whatever that one that you fighting at. That game had a lot of in-game dungeons and in-game summons and shit. But yeah, I give Final Fantasy, what was that? I was talking about 13. The summons were okay. They were okay. The little vehicle thing was straight. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like something I was like, oh. So, man, 13. I mean, now the linear part didn't kill me. The linear part in game. 13's in game was great. In game was great. The weapons that you can get and all that stuff that you do at in game was great. In game wasn't nothing to play with. Them bosses were tough at the end of the in game, man. The damn Animantoids you had to fight, the little one you had to fight in the maze, all those bosses that you fight in the maze were hella fun to do. Until you got to that last one that can get you all them status effects. That, yeah, no. 13's in-game was on point. Dude, I ain't gonna even fake. I give 13 an A. I give 13 an A. I sure will. I give 13 a high A. I definitely will. And see, 10, the reason 10 I like 10's characters more than 13. And then I like 10's in-game, we had to fight the Dark Aeons was dope. Oh wait, 10 was the one that had Aeons, wasn't it? They call them Aeons. So yeah, like, man, like, it's really the Final Fantasies. Like, I see 7. Everybody I know a lot of people want to like, man, why isn't 7 in the S rank, man? 7 should be in the S rank. 7 definitely is close and near dear to my heart. It was my first Final Fantasy. And it's just after I played the rest of the other Final Fantasy games, I saw so much. Yeah, it was just so much more, man, after these games were coming out. Alright. So, 13-2. Oh, and the villain in 13 was trash. I did not like the villain in 13. You know what? I might have to put 13-2. I actually put 13-2. Cause I love Caius. I put 13-2 in C. I would put Lightning Returns and 13-2 in C. Now, if all these were together, if 13, 13-2, and 13-3 were all one game, they would go in S rank too. Just like with Final Fantasy 7. If Final Fantasy 7, the compilation plus the integrate, the Final Fantasy 7 remake, all that would be in S rank, point blank. Just like if 13, I put all 13 together, S rank. All right, last one, you guys, last one. But yeah, 13-2 had good in game. It really did. But I still put it in C rank only because you were playing with Sarah and the Noelle. You were playing with Sarah and Noelle, and it was okay. But all the 13s had very good in-game. In-game and gameplay on all the 13 games were dope as hell. That was all the 13's strongest point. Story was very convoluted when you mixed them, like when you played them all three together. But the gameplay and the action and all that stuff that was 13 strong point. Definitely 13 strong point. All right. here we go to 15. 15 is gonna be controversial too. So this game was really rushed, man. It was really rushed. So about this game, man, I don't know, man. This one is a tough one. Man, this was the first one that went to the action style gameplay. It was nice. It was nice seeing the change of pace of Final Fantasy 15, playing the action gameplay. It was fun. Final Fantasy 15 gameplay was fun. Like, I had a lot of fun playing it. I did not like the way summons were done. Worst summons by far. Looked cool, dope, but the way that they had all them restrictions in order to summon them, shitty as hell. So all that being said, no, that man, Final Fantasy 15 had the worst summons. Oh my god, the way that summons, and then I think you only got like 3 of them bitches, or was it 4? You might have got 4 of them. I know you got Titan, I know you got Shiva, I know you got Leviathan. Did you get Bahamut? I can't remember if you got Bahamut, man. I just know, man. Oh, you got Rama too. You got Rama. But like, I just hated the way they did summons in that game. Story-wise, story was interesting. It wasn't nothing to brag about though. It was okay. It was okay. The skipping to the time in the future was okay. It was all right. Endgame was nice. Final Fantasy 15's endgame was nice. They had a lot of stuff that you could do, but it wasn't particularly like hard. You had some hard bosses, but it wasn't particularly like difficult to complete any of them. So yeah, man. But you know what? Royal Edition. Now if you're taking Royal Edition, if I take in consideration Royal Edition, now I can't even say this because I haven't played most of Royal Edition. I can only talk about like how much I played of the original when it first came out. But I hear Royal Edition is amazing though, so I can't speak on Royal. I can't honestly speak on Royal because I know they added to where the other characters were playable and all that good stuff too. I'm sure Royal, if I was speaking of Royal and played Royal, I would probably put it in A. Maybe it would change after, because right now I'm sitting at a B with 15. It will probably change after I play Royal Edition. It will probably change to A after I play Royal. Because the only one I played all the way through the end game and everything was the original Final Fantasy 15 before they started coming out with all this, the DLC episodes and all that stuff. Because I only played one DLC episode, and I think that was the first one they came out with Proto. That was the only one. But yeah, Final Fantasy 15, man. For now, I'll definitely give it a B. Definitely give it a B. No Final Fantasy got a D rank on mine. No Final Fantasy got a D rank. But yeah, 15 for now, I give it a B rank. Man, this is an interesting. That's my first time seeing me rank these games in like tier lists. And you guys know, whoever knows me, know I love Final Fantasy. So man, but this was an interesting list, man. This was an interesting list to do, and it was hella fun to do it. Like, I had a lot of fun doing this. But man, this was fun. This was fun. Now I'm gonna do another. Dude, this really makes me want to do another challenge for Final Fantasy. I don't know. We may still do it. But this is the end of this video, you guys. You guys let me know, what do you guys think is your favorite Final Fantasy and how they rank on this list. This is my personal opinion of where they rank from, and this for me playing all the games, doing most of the end game and pretty much all of the games. Let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna do a Tales one. It makes me want to do a Tales of one. We're gonna do a Tales one next. We're gonna do a Tales one, the ones at least that I've played. That's gonna be fun too. Alright, you guys, well, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think. Anyway. Peace out, you guys. I hope y'all have a good night. Peace.